All right, let's dive straight into this explainer and crack open the insider's playbook for sourcing drinkware from China in 2026. The global market is shifting incredibly fast right now, mostly driven by material innovations like 316 stainless steel and BPA-free Tritan. Looking at the data, sourcing is no longer just about hunting for the lowest price tag, it's about navigating entirely different domestic and export ecosystems. So let's look at the absolute best blueprint for sourcing effectively without getting burned.
Here's how we're going to break this down. First, mapping China's drinkware hubs. Second, 1688 versus export factories. Third, the ultimate quality control checklist. Fourth, the bulk sourcing workflow. And finally, finding your perfect match.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Mapping China's Drinkware Hubs. To source effectively, you've got to know exactly where these products are born. And get this, 70%. That number is just staggering, right? China literally accounts for over 70% of the entire world's drinkware production. But this massive production isn't just happening anywhere. The market is highly fragmented into specialized industrial clusters. You really can't just search for a generic drinkware factory anymore. You need to target the specific province that specializes in your exact material. So, starting with metal, if you're looking for stainless steel, all research points straight to Yangkang in Zhejiang province. This place is universally known as the cup capital of China. I mean, if you need double-wall vacuum-insulated tumblers or thermos flasks, this is literally the center of the universe. A whopping 90% of the top domestic 1688 suppliers are based right here, specializing in complex techniques like powder coating and laser engraving. It's the ultimate geographic target for e-commerce and outdoor brands looking for the best possible prices on stainless steel. Now, shifting gears away from metal over to glass. The data splits into two very distinct hubs that serve totally different needs: Hejian and Zibo. Hejian is your absolute go-to for premium hand-blown borosilicate items, perfect if you're doing high-end home decor. On the flip side, if you're buying promotional items in bulk, you definitely don't want artisanal hand-blowing. You're going to want Zibo's mechanized high-volume production lines. And rounding out our geographic tour, we have Chaozhou in Guangdong province, and it is the undisputed king of daily use ceramics. For trendy stoneware, sublimation mugs, or fine bone china, this is the exact cluster you want to target, especially for promotional gift companies or big retail chains that are looking for massive scale. Moving right along to Section 2, 1688 versus export factories. When you actually start searching for these factories, you're going to hit a massive fork in the road. On the domestic side, tapping into the 1688 ecosystem gives you prices that are 15 to 25% lower, plus incredibly low minimum order quantities. Sometimes we're talking just 10 to 50 units. But it is a Chinese-only ecosystem, which means you're going to need a sourcing agent, and these factories often lack international certifications. Now, take the export route like Alibaba, and you get full FDA and BSCI compliance, plus English-speaking sales teams. The catch? You are paying for that export overhead, and your MOQs will absolutely jump into the thousands. So here's a massive takeaway for 2026. The absolute smartest brand owners are heavily shifting toward the domestic 1688 market. Why? To snatch up those raw factory designs. Because let's face it, by the time a new tumbler design makes it to international platforms like Alibaba, it's usually already heavily saturated on Amazon. Sourcing directly from 1688 is exactly how savvy buyers are securing that crucial first-mover advantage before the rest of the globe catches on. All right, let's get into Section 3, the quality control checklist. Look, capturing a trend doesn't mean a thing if you fall into the usual sourcing traps. For metal drinkware, you absolutely must do what experts call the 304 test. To make sure suppliers aren't secretly mixing cheaper, rust-prone 201 stainless steel into the outer walls just to save a few pennies, you need to explicitly request a spectrometer material analysis report. This verifies that proper 304 or 18-8 stainless steel is actually being used throughout the whole cup. You also have to keep this front of mind. In the drinkware industry, food grade is a legal requirement. It is not a suggestion. Domestic 1688 suppliers mostly produce for local Chinese standards. So if you need FDA or European LFGB compliance, you have to proactively ask for recent test reports from recognized labs like SGS. Oh, and here's a totally fascinating trend happening right now. 316 medical-grade steel is rapidly becoming the new 2026 baseline for high-end tea and coffee tumblers. Now, ironically, the absolute most frequent point of failure across all this high-tech metal and glass is the lid. I mean, nobody wants a bag full of spilled coffee, right? On 1688, a lot of factories don't actually make their own lids. They just buy them from third-party injection molding shops, which means they completely skip quality control on the gasket fitment. You have to force clarification between leak-proof and just spill-proof and make sure those seals are actually being tested.
Your product's surface finish carries its own set of hidden risks too. Powder coating is definitely the gold standard here. It's super durable and eco-friendly. Spray painting might seem cheaper upfront, but it's notorious for chipping. Then you've got electroplating, which looks gorgeous but requires incredibly strict environmental compliance. If you go with electroplating, you have to vet that factory meticulously. Literally one failed government environmental check, and your entire supply chain could be shut down overnight. Which brings us to Section 4, the bulk sourcing workflow. So how does all this build into an actual chronological procurement process? Well, this four-step workflow is the ultimate safety net the experts rely on. First, the RFQ phase, which requires a highly detailed spec sheet. Second, if you're buying from multiple 1688 suppliers, use a consolidation warehouse in Ningbo or Yiwu to combine your samples into one single air shipment to save some cash. Third, for orders over $50,000, hiring a third-party auditor is completely non-negotiable to ensure your order isn't secretly outsourced to an unregulated shop during peak season. Finally, the pre-shipment inspection, where drop test and 24-hour vacuum insulation tests actually prove the product does what it's supposed to do. There's also a pretty harsh logistics reality we have to talk about. Sourcing drinkware literally means you are paying to ship air. These products are insanely bulky. To make unit costs viable, bulk buyers essentially have to utilize massive 40HQ containers. And for U.S. importers, 2026 is bringing massive scrutiny on California Prop 65 compliance. You've got to aggressively watch for hidden lead content in any decorative inks used on your cups.
Finally, Section 5, finding your perfect match. Pulling this whole explainer together means matching your specific business model to the absolute ideal strategy. For instance, dropshippers should leverage 1688 through a sourcing agent to grab those super low MOQs and jump on fast-moving trends. E-commerce and private label brands, you should head straight to Yongkong for factories capable of laser customization and proper BSCI audits. Meanwhile, major bulk buyers or distributors need to bypass middlemen entirely and forge direct factory ties in Zhejiang or Guangdong for maximum scale and price stability.
Oh, and here is a fantastic insider trick for navigating these platforms. If you're ever kind of on the fence about whether a 1688 profile is a true factory or just a trading middleman marking up the price, always check their business scope on their company profile. If it says production or manufacturing, you've likely found a real deal factory. If it only says wholesale or trading, they are a middleman selling everything from mugs to umbrellas.
Armed with this knowledge of regional hubs, the critical 304 test, and how to master the 1688 landscape, the playbook is officially in your hands. But it leaves us with a much bigger question to ponder. As domestic Chinese markets become more and more accessible to savvy global buyers, how much longer will traditional export middlemen actually be able to survive? The supply chain of 2026 heavily rewards total transparency and direct access. So, will you be the one setting the trend at the factory level or the one paying a premium for yesterday's designs?